having me. I know it was a lot of information in a very short time, but I'm happy to open it up for questions. I know I tried to leave a good amount of time for a little bit of dialogue. So
thank you, Eileen, for this really amazing and inspiring presentation. And thank you for so many great toolkits. You are just giving us so much thought, so much information and so many ideas for future activities. Before we read from the list of the question, I am going kind of to preempt of question of many of you. I know, Eileen, that you have shared so many toolkits and links, and so many of us just want to put our hands immediately on all these great resources. So I know that the first question from many people in the audience will be today, how we can have all this in a more manageable format, not only in the recording that we, of course, are going to post on our website, but I know there will be many, many questions about how we can get a copy of your slides. And so would it be possible to have a list of all these resources and share it with the audience?
Absolutely. So I'm planning to take my slides. I'm going to save them as a PDF just for size, to make it easier for you. All the links will still be clickable to everything. And I will include in the PDF the slides that I didn't cover today that took time out. So, I felt like I was trying to get everything in there. So it's kind of rushing. My longer presentation on this topic includes several opportunities to pause and to sort of digest what you're hearing and to listen to and respond to a piece of poetry that's related to that. It's super fun. I love doing that. And so I will include the slides that have those poetry prompts in them as well for future reference. So I will share that. You want me to share that with you, Elena, and then you can share it out. Okay. Yep, that's ready. I will send that out tonight to you.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. And then so probably the easiest way would be that anybody can send an email to me. And then those of you who are a part of our Miracle Circle, you will have a copy of this through the Blackboard. And if you are not a part of the Miracle cohort, then you can just email to me. And thank you also, Eileen, for sharing your email. So
yeah, feel free to contact me directly too. If you are not part of the Miracle cohort and want me to just send it to you, I can do that.
Great. So I guess then my next question will be also, and it probably resonates with several questions from the audience, is what are the best ways, in your opinion, to integrate the science education about climate change, which is so intimidating, with with this idea of teaching love and teaching teaching about environment from the perspective of optimism and hope and possibilities of finding solutions. So, of course, there are many different approaches, but where should we start? I hear this question very often from my students, and they're a little bit older, but, they come sometimes to me, are we really, experiencing this almost end of the world? And so, what are the best ways? What are the best way to start?
Yeah, the first thing that I would usually recommend to people, and of any age, whether it's elementary school kids or elderly people or college students, is if as an educator you don't already have a practice of spending time outdoors, encouraging time outdoors with your students, that's something that I would strongly recommend that you start. Even if it's not explicitly tied to climate, just saying we're going to have whatever class, like we're going to have reading time outside or we're going to do math outside. It can simply be going outdoors, getting accustomed to using a space, having it become a space that has a lot of experiences that have happened there, and that gives it meaning to you. And I sometimes hear a question about place-based education where people say, well, what if you teach your kids or your students how to really love their schoolyard or really love this forest by their house, but then they move and now they live in the desert. Like, how are they going to know how to love the desert? And what I try to remind people of is that, what you're doing is you're teaching a skill. You're teaching how to get to know a place. And that love for a place comes naturally after an extended period of time in it and having a lot of experiences in it. And so I like to start with that, like get to know a place with your group of people or encourage your students to have a place or even just to think about the places that they know and love differently. So sometimes I've asked students, especially older students, and college students would be great for this, draw me a map. I love having them draw maps. Draw me a map of what you would consider home. And it's really fun to see how that experience, what that looks like. Sometimes it's a house. Sometimes it's like, the fields and things around. Sometimes it's like a neighborhood, and encourage them to really come to understand and know their own community. Because that's when you start to understand and know your own community, you're going to start to see the way that it's affected by changes that happen. And it's a much more, I think, in a lot of ways, organic process than just saying, let's go outside and look at the temperature on the pavement, although that is certainly helpful. You're a classroom teacher, you got to hit standards, like you got to do stuff like that. And so some of it is just take that very elementary stuff, but as much as possible, get outside where you can see something happening. This is my favorite time of year to talk about climate change, to be honest, because it's when all of the new things are happening, like the blackbirds are coming back and the sandhill cranes and the maple sap. And so that focus on phenology, looking at the seasonal changes, is also a really fun way to introduce both climate change concepts, but also getting like excited and connected to the natural world.
Great, thank you, excellent. So the next question is from Tim. How we can help convince our colleagues that science classes should address social aspects of environmental concerns? I have been told to stick to the science by some of my colleagues.
Yes, that is really, it's hard. And one thing I would say is and it's one of the things I like about the next generation science standards, if that's what you're using, is there are pretty clear recommendations in those that you need to address how humans have impacted the environment and look at how human systems act as constraints on the system, or things that help make solutions better. So there are some clear standards that I like to go to as like, this is why it's okay. That's one. The other thing I encourage is, as much as possible, if you can, try to connect with those other teachers, teach as a team. And I know it's not always possible, especially, in high school where things get to be really siloed, but sometimes it's not even that you're working on the same project. It's just that you have support from teachers in other disciplines who can say, you know what, it's actually really helpful when students understand this when they come to my class because XYZ, it helps them do this better. So having support of other teachers, if you're able to in your building, I think is really, really important. And the other thing, and I was kind of joking when I said it, but also kind of not, is really take advantage of that student voice, that student-led aspect of learning, and allow the students to be the ones who bring up some of those questions. I mean, you're the guide, right? You sort of like, how to make it so that they ask the questions that you want them to ask sometimes, but do take advantage of that opportunity to have those discussions and really show how those connect to the science. And sometimes the even social science, behavioral science, psychology, like those are sciences. So they've got stuff to tell us about how the environment works. You really can't teach environmental science with only science. It's just not how that field works. But as much support as possible, get yourself connected to a cohort with like this, who can support and provide you resources too.
Yeah, thank you for this. As you are sending us more questions, I just wanted to draw to the link that Tim has actually just shared in the chat. If you are looking for a breakdown of a semester GCC class for high school, the following has timeline and material. And so there's this access to very interesting collection on Google. You might want to save it because once the webinar closes, we would lose the connection. So we have just time perhaps to take one more question as we are running out of time, or any other last moment reflection.
Eileen, I have for you.
Mhm.
When I'm teaching pre-service teachers, we have this class that goes from, K3 or that general range. It's a pretty, intense science class. But the teachers always say, well, what can we do about climate change? Like, how can we really address climate change, and what should we be doing at this point in the small children's career? And you certainly have answered part of that, but do you have any more thoughts on for the age 3 to 7 range?
Yeah, at that, I think it's real simple at age 3 to 7. It's get out there, spend time in the world, get to know it and love it. And I think I am always surprised by the connections that kids that age can start to draw after a long period of time outdoors and observing nature. And so I tell this story a lot, but my youngest daughter is 6. I have 3 kids. My youngest is 6. And we own like 2 acres of property. There's tons of garlic mustard, an invasive species on our property. And we've been working on pulling it every year. My husband and I started paying our kids 10 cents an ounce for all the garlic mustard that they pulled. And my youngest daughter at the time was 4. And I had been, pulling garlic mustard. She could identify it. She knew it. We have a ton of deer on our property. And she looked at me one day while we were pulling garlic mustard and she said, wouldn't it be great if deer ate garlic mustard? And it just blew my mind because like she's 4 and she got it that like this is a problem because this thing that's higher in the food chain isn't eating it. And she couldn't have if I had tried to teach her about food chains, like she wouldn't have gotten that concept. She couldn't have articulated what was behind it, but she saw it and she observed it. And so for that younger age, that just observation, that time in nature where you have time unstructured to just be out there, enjoy what you're doing, explore, play. When you'd be really surprised, I think, when you get to the older grades and they start learning about these ecological concepts, it clicks because they're like, oh, I've seen that. I didn't know what that was, but I saw it. So I think that's pretty simple. That's what I recommend. Just get out there. Sorry, Wanda, I am not on Twitter. I don't understand it.
Yeah, I was just about to read this question and you have answered it.
I am on LinkedIn. I am on Facebook. I have an Instagram that's professional that I never use, but I will put it in the chat if you want. Every once in a while, I post something. So I'll put that in.
Well, this is great, and thank you again for sharing different options, how we can connect with you and ask more questions. So thank you so much. Yeah. The presentation is going to be online, so this recording would appear already this afternoon on the program website, and then the edited video, as usually, would show on our website in a couple of weeks. Thank you very much, Eileen. Really great presentation. So many ideas, so many resources. I'm so
thank you for having
for
me. So happy to be back. If anyone's at the MSTA conference on Saturday and wants the poetry experience, come check me out on Saturday afternoon. So otherwise you'll get it so you can experience it. Don't worry. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Eileen. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. Our next presentation will be in 1 month, April 7th. This will be actually the last presentation of the year, and we will be featuring a speaker from one of the resources that Eileen has recommended today. So Matt Scott from the Project Drawdown is going to join us and actually talk about climate change storytelling. So please join us next week, April 7th. You will see the link showing up very soon on our Facebook and LinkedIn and on the website. And those of you who have subscribed for GVSU CCS mailing list would be receiving it as well. So thank you, everyone, again. Have a wonderful afternoon or evening or night, depending on in which time zone you are right now. And we'll see you in a month.